Hi guys, German Prepper here. It's another incredibly windy day here in the Black Forest, so again I find myself sheltering and trying to stay away from the wind because you just wouldn't hear a word I was saying if I stood out in the open. Today I thought I'd answer some more of your questions about German Prepper, prepping and politics in Germany. Let's start. What part of Germany are you in? Right now, as I said, I'm in the Black Forest, but normally I live on the Baden-Württemberg-Bayern border in a large rural village. At what pivotal point in your life did you realise you needed to start prepping? I've answered this before, guys, by saying that I've always been a natural prepper to one extent or another. However, there have been a few wake-up calls, though, that spurred me on. Firstly, the 7th of July 2005 bombing in London, where the tube train in front of mine was blown up and I was evacuated to the surface where a bus was blown up, and then I spent 5 hours walking home with no cell phone service, map, food or water. Secondly, the virus that had us all stuck at home and behind masks. Luckily, I had toilet roll to spare, but boy did I stock up after it finally calmed down. Thirdly was the realisation just before Christmas 2021 that Russia was moving to invade Ukraine. I warned everyone I could over Christmas dinner and was dismissed. So I just started prepping all the harder and thought up this channel to get my warnings out there to people who would listen. Moving on, what kind of creatures would you recommend eating if stuck out in the wilderness? Well, let's assume we're talking about Germany. You have no firearm and it's an emergency. Rabbits caught with snares, frogs and fish from ponds caught with lines, nets or frog gigs, large land snails of the edible variety if you can find them, birds of any type if you can net them. Ducks would be a good bet. Next question. Do you think all the laws imposed by governments are helping mankind? No. Government as a rule only serves itself. Laws for the most part are used to subdue, restrict, steal from and frankly enslave mankind. Now you might be thinking, what about welfare laws, for instance? Well, consider this quote from Chancellor Scholz when asked whether rising energy and food prices could trigger social unrest. No, I don't think we will see any unrest in this country in this form, on the grounds that Germany is a welfare state. In other words, people desperately dependent on the state are not likely to rise up against it. Have you ever heard of a better reason to prep, guys? A very controversial question now, carefully phrased. Restrictions and health laws. What has the German pushback been? Very little, as most Germans are used to complying. However, many have sensibly avoided the experimental injection, and even in my own small village there have been protest marches against it and the insane government mandates. All to no avail, sadly. Question. Are many Germans dissatisfied with the EU or Nato? The honest answer here is there is very little dissatisfaction. Most Germans I've spoken to on the topic think the EU and Nato are both essential. This is, of course, the opinion pushed by the government and the media they literally own. The only party that has not been part of a governing coalition here in Germany is the AfD, or Alternative for Germany party. They are not so warm to either the EU or Nato, but both they and their voters are demonised and harassed by the government and media. Next question. What kind of impact has mass immigration had on the countryside? I have to be careful here, guys. I'm going to state a negative impact, but nothing compared to the big towns and cities. The AfD I already mentioned is the only political party that is not pushing unlimited immigration to Germany. If I say more, this channel will almost certainly be banned based on German law. This is not a free country. An appropriate next question. Do you ever wish you moved to the US and had full access to firearms? Yes, I love America, the US Constitution, the culture, so definitely. I would likely only consider a red state well away from any big cities, somewhere with mountains, lakes and forests ideally. Recommendations in the comments section. Now for a more light-hearted question. What apocalyptic films would you recommend? Well, I'm going to answer with apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic films I love from the 80s. 1984, based on George Orwell's excellent novel. Dead End Driving, Mad Max, technically 1979, Mad Max 2, Road Warrior, Mad Max 3, Thunderdome, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, Rats, Night of Terror, and Parasite from 1982. One more would be Threads. I have a nav video up on that one. This list is not exhaustive, but simply a random selection that came to mind. I could go on for hours. Some of those mentioned guys can be viewed for free on YouTube, by the way. A question for you all now to end. What is your favourite apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic film? Extra credit if it's from the 80s. As always, looking forward to reading your answers. Keep prepping, guys. Cheers for now.